today we are going to make whole wheat sourdough waffles, and you will see that it is super duper easy. So I want waffles in the morning, so I have to start the process the night before to allow the start to get fed and to ferment all of the flour that we're going to use so I have a good sourdough in the morning. So what I'm going to do is grind 6 cups of flour, because that's the size of recipe that I'm going to use for today. I will send you a picture of the recipe that I use scaled for different batch sizes. So 6 cups of flour is what I need. So I have put my wheat in the little hopper here and it's ready to go. When I first opened the mock mill, I read the instruction manual and still didn't know how to use it. So I had to watch some YouTube videos on how to adjust the grinder wheels to fine or coarse setting. So you need to watch some videos and kind of get familiar with how it works, but I always grind flour on the finest setting. So that's what I'm going to do today. So I need 6 cups. I'm just going to we have 6 cups of flour in the bowl. Now I've just used white wheat. You can add whole oats, you can add brown rice, you can add popcorn kernels. They said brown rice makes for really chewy waffles that are really good, and popcorn kernels, a handful of popcorn kernels makes the rice or the waffles really good. But I just use plain wheat, and my kids love these waffles. So I've got 6 cups of flour in my bowl. Now I'm going to take my start. This is the size of start that I keep in the fridge, and I do not feed my start regularly. So this start is really sad looking. It's been in there for about 2 weeks. I haven't looked at it, I haven't thought about it, but now I need to use it. So it has this liquid on top, which I'm just gonna drain off and just dump it down the sink. Okay, and this start looks completely dead, but there is still life in it. So what I'm gonna do is there's probably a half a cup of start in here, and I'm not gonna scrape the bowl completely clean. I'm gonna leave some remnants in here because that's how I feed the next batch of start. So I'm just going to set this aside, and we're going to refeed the start in a minute. So all I have in the bowl is 6 cups of ground wheat and the half a cup of start that I just added. Now if you have a little bit more or a little bit less of start, that is totally fine because it's going to sit overnight. So even if you had like a 1/4 of a cup of start or an 1/8 of a cup, that's fine too because it's going to have time to ferment overnight. Now, all I do is add enough water, and this is just plain tap water. I'm going to add enough water to make kind of a thick dough. And you just kind of have to add enough water until it feels right. I'm not going to make it waffle consistency because in the morning I have to add eggs, and I'm going to add a little bit of kefir in the morning. So I'm going to make this a little bit thicker so I can allow for the eggs in the morning. So I'm just going to add the water and mix it in really well. And I'm going to keep adding until it's stirrable. And the water is just room temperature. I wouldn't use super cold water because you don't want to, we want this mixture to get warm. So you could even use slightly warm water if you wanted, because it ferments better as it warms up. There, so now this is looking to where I'm happy with it, and I need to switch to a bigger spoon. So right now, it's like it's thicker than I would want for waffles, but it's stirrable and I can mix it in pretty well. It's better to go on the thick side because in the morning I can add more liquid if I want, but I don't want to add more flour in the morning because it would not have a chance to ferment and be part of the sourdough, and then you would lose the health benefits on that extra flour. So if you're using sourdough to increase digestibility and nutrition, I want to add all the flour tonight. And so this looks really good to me. So the texture is just, it glops off the spoon. It could be a little bit thicker or it could be a little bit runnier and it would still be just fine in the morning. But like I said, I want to add all the flour tonight and thin it out in the morning if I have to, rather than have a batch that's too thin. So I'm just going to give this a really good stir. And then all I'm going to do, okay, remember all we have in here is flour and starch and water. I'm just going to cover this with a wet tea towel, and I'm going to let this sit overnight in the oven with the oven off, but with the pilot light on. And that will generate just enough warmth to really get this going. When I come in the morning, it's going to be all bubbly and ready to go to make really nice, light, fluffy waffles. So now I have this starch container that just has remnants left on the side, and I need to get some more starch going for my next batch. So I'm going to grind some wheat, maybe a cup or so. Okay, actually a cup is way too much. I did maybe a quarter of a cup, and I might do a half a cup, but for demonstration purposes, I'm just going to speed this along. So all I'm doing, see, I have about a half a cup of flour in here. I'm going to add just enough water to make this stirrable. And so this is a little bit thick. It does thin out just a little as it ferments. And I'm going to stir in all the remnants that were on the side, because that is what's going to feed this starch, and what's all those little organisms that are going to eat this new flour are in the old starch. I just need to stir that up and make sure that it is well mixed in. So this is about the texture that it is. Okay, so this is my start for next time. Now if I want to cook with this in the next 2 or 3 days, I'm going to leave this on the counter, just open a little bit so it can breathe. But I know that I am not going to want to make waffles or bread for probably at least a week, maybe longer. So I'm going to put the lid on it and I'm going to stick it in the fridge, and I'm going to forget about it until I take it out again to make waffles next time. I do not worry about feeding it every couple of days like some people tell you to, because I could never keep that going. So we're going to put the bowl with the starch and the flour in the oven overnight, and then we'll come back in the morning and finish our waffles. Okay. So it is the next morning and I am going to make waffles. So I have my waffle iron heating up. I've pulled my bowl out of the oven where it's been sitting overnight, and as you can see, the mixture that I put in here, which was just starch and flour and water, has doubled in size. It's now light and airy and full of bubbles, and it has a distinctive sourdough smell to it, which is that smell that we associate with sourdough bread. So now I'm going to finish the rest of the waffle batter, and this is the same procedure you would use if you were making muffins or quick breads, any other kind of whole wheat sourdough quick bread. So I'm going to add my baking powder, and this is the secret to sourdough quick breads, because when you add the baking powder, it is the chemical reaction between the baking powder and the acidity in the dough, which makes it sweet instead of sourdough. So even though you have all the benefits of sourdough health-wise, once I add the baking powder into the batter, or excuse me, baking soda into the batter, you do not get that tangy sourdough flavor, because I don't want that in my waffles or my muffins. So then I add my salt and eggs, and it calls for 2/3 cup for this particular recipe that I'm making, which makes 12 waffles. It calls for 2/3 cup of oil, but I'm only going to add 1/3 cup because I want to add some milk kefir that I have. So I'm going to add the milk kefir for the rest of the liquid, and then I'm going to stir it up really well and see if I can add a little bit more kefir to thin it out. And so basically what we're looking for here is just a really nice, pourable waffle batter that's the texture and the consistency that you want to make waffles with. Okay, so I've got a couple waffles made, and I've noticed that my waffle maker does not crisp them up as much as I would like. So for my waffle maker, 4 minutes is about the right crispness for the waffles to stand up well in the freezer. And of course that'll vary for your waffle maker, but just be aware that the standard setting may not be the crispness level that you like. And so as I'm looking at this batter, you know, I've added the baking soda, and this batter is continuing to grow and to bubble as the alkalinity of the soda reacts with the acidity of the batter. And so if you have to put this in the fridge for some reason and not cook it right away, be aware that if it sits too long, that baking soda will lose its leavening power and it will not be quite so light and airy. But I have had to put it in the fridge sometimes because I had 2 or 3 waffles that I needed to finish later, and so you can do that. So as I'm cooling the waffles, I move them to a drying rack, and I used to stack them 5 or 6 high to allow them to cool, and then I would move them to the freezer. And I realized that the weight of the waffles is it would cause the waffles to kind of collapse and get all flat and really sad looking. So now I've figured out that I just let them cool single layer until they're completely cool, and then I'll stack them like 2 high and let them freeze completely in only, you know, 1 or 2 high out in the freezer. And then once they're totally frozen solid, then I'll stack them 5 or 6 high, put them in a plastic bag, and store them in the freezer. And my kids will usually whip one out. They'll take a frozen waffle, put it right in the waffle iron, frozen, and let it defrost and crisp up a little, and then it is ready to eat. And these waffles are the lightest, fluffiest waffles you'll ever eat, and you never even think about the fact that they're whole wheat, just because the sourdough helps to break those proteins down, and it just makes it so light and fluffy. And I make a honey sweetened strawberry sauce that we have on top, so it is very delicious and very healthy and very quick.